Welcome back to Joel Explores Tech. In this video, I want to take a look at a boxed copy of Adobe Photoshop 3.0 for Windows 3.1. I picked this up in a large collection of graphic design software I picked up a few years back. I made another video about that collection where I just went through and looked at everything that was included. If you want to see that, I'll leave a link in the description below. Photoshop is one of the most iconic pieces of software used by millions over the years for everything from graphic design, photo editing, web design, game design, and pretty much anything else you can think of that would involve digital image manipulation. And this was the first version that supported layers, allowing you to independently edit each layer, move things around in a non-destructive way. So I'm excited to see how this runs on the 46 machine I have. A 46DX266 currently has 8 megs of RAM. The requirement for Photoshop is 10 megs, and the recommended is 16. So I'm going to be upgrading the machine to 16 megs of RAM with 4 30-pin SIMs. We'll get that all installed and then take a look at what's in the box. And then if possible, I'd like to see if I can make the thumbnail for this video in Photoshop on the 486. So with that said, let's start exploring. So before we try to install, let's take a look at what's in the box itself. These would have obviously been very expensive applications back in the day. This came as a bundle with Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. If we take off the sleeve, there's an inner box with some nice printed designs. And then if we look inside, we have the Photoshop 3.0 Deluxe CD-ROM, so everything on one convenient CD. We have 3.5 floppies, looks like 8 floppy disks to install. Then we have a note for Windows 95 users about video card compatibility. We have a nice reference card for all the shortcut keys for using Photoshop. We have a getting started guide. Looks like this one is black and white. We have a tutorial, fairly beefy tutorial guide here in color. We have a Beyond the Basics, also in color, giving you some kind of more advanced techniques. The user guide, probably the largest in the bundle here. Again in color, going through all the features of Photoshop. Looks like we have Adobe Streamline, and we've got a single floppy disk here for installing Streamline. I remember using Streamline back in the day. It is for creating vector outlines from a bitmap image. Actually, here's a good example. I don't know if that shows up on the camera very well, but you could take a pixelated bitmap image and create smooth vectors. Obviously today that's something we can do very easily, but back in the day that saved designers many hours of manually tracing a bitmapped image. And then Adobe Typeline. So it looks like this is probably for placing text on paths. Again, this was things that today we would do very easily in almost any graphics application. But back in the day, it was not something that was easy to do. So it was obviously broken out into its own application, it looks like. And a floppy as well. Yeah, single floppy for installing that. So that is everything in the box. Let's go ahead and get the machine set up and take a look at Photoshop 3.0. So I have installed the extra RAM on the system. As we can see, we've got 16 megs installed. And I also have the disk in, so let's confirm that it's reading. And it is. Looks like we've got a number of things on there. Let's see what's in the goodies directory here. F Factory, that's probably Filter Factory. That was a third-party library of filters for Photoshop. Textures, probably a number of texture images. Yeah, Weave, Stucco for use in your Photoshop designs. So a lot of cool stuff on the disk here to play with. Looks like scanner drivers, some stock art. So let's go ahead and jump into Windows. So let's go ahead and jump in to File Manager. And here in the CD, we've got disk 1 with our setup. So we're in Windows 3.1 with Photoshop 3 installed. Let's go ahead and launch it. You can see the version is 3.05. And here we go. So we've got the interface that we're all fairly familiar with even today, with our different floating palettes. Obviously the layers being one of the key features that was introduced in Photoshop 3. I don't think we'll run through every feature in depth, but I thought I would kind of run through first just some of the general features, just so we can compare with modern stuff that we might be familiar with today. And then I'm planning on creating the thumbnail for this video in this Photoshop on the 486. So looking through the menus, we've got our standard recent history of open files. I did some quick tests loading up stuff. Got all our preferences for things like your scratch disk, how the cursor appears, whether you want the precise cursor or a circular indication of the brush size. Maxes out at 256 pixels, whereas modern Photoshop you can go to a very large brush size. Some color configuration options, and you can use the Windows or the Photoshop native color picker. Early on, Photoshop users were a lot more focused on print media. So there's a lot of stuff about CMYK, color separation, stuff like that if you're doing print work. I think these days a lot more people are focused on web type stuff. Acquire, I remember back in the day having to use this for any type of scanning, coming into Photoshop and getting your scans. We can, actually while we're here, let's go ahead and just open up a sample image from the tutorials, just so we've got something open. This is a single color image, so it's just black and white, so not the RGB. You can set your image modes. Index color was always a thing for when you were working on the web and you wanted your specific 256 colors for web GIFs, things like that. I remember back in the day, in early web work, there were certain colors that were safe for different machines because Mac and Windows had different base color sets. So even with the 256 colors, there was a different set of colors per machine. So you had even a subset of colors you could use for if you wanted like a certain, like a brand color or something like that. So there were certain web safe colors, they called them. There's a lot of things for inverting the image, some effects, posterize. We've got our standard like levels, curves, all the kind of stuff that we're used to today. But they had that in the early Photoshop. Curves, brightness and contrast, duplicate the image, because you only had a certain number of undos. Having that a duplicate image could give you sort of a backup if you wanted to explore further. And then we go into our filters. So even back at this point, you could install third-party filters. But just seeing some of the filters that were there at this early point, we've got our standard blurs, radial blur, motion blur, some of the distorts. Let's actually do one just as a kind of showing the speed at this point. So this one's actually pretty quick, it looks like. So you get a preview and then it will render on the larger image as well. So that was pretty quick, even on this 46 machine. Let's try a blur. So here with the Gaussian blur, we're getting a real-time preview in the large view. Oh, actually, here's the, yeah, so you could just preview in the preview window or have the full preview. Render clouds. Remember this being always a good starting point. If you were doing a lot of different effects like textures or things, you could use the displacement map as a good starting point. And then do something like mosaic, to get like say like a grass texture or a wall texture. You could see this almost giving you like a Minecraft dirt kind of texture thing, using something like this, obviously in a color mode. We've only got one undo, so that took me back to the different clouds, but I can't go back any further, so there's no history. I can't remember which version, it was 4 or 5, I believe, that added in the history palette. And then we have all our modifications for selections. Actually, let's reopen this image real quick, or open a new one. How about something with colors? We've got like our magic wand, so we still had the ability to select areas based on common colors. Then we could do like invert if we wanted everything except that area. So all the common stuff you're used to today. You could save selections, things for setting up your window size. Obviously this is the older style Windows controls, but you can maximize and then zoom in, pan around your image with that spacebar control that is still in Photoshop today. Things for controlling your palettes, again, all fairly similar to what we're used to. Some built-in help, and then our palettes. So we've got that tool palette, so giving you options for the currently selected tool. Most of these are probably all things you're familiar with if you've used Photoshop in the last 20 years. Got swatches, scratch palette, and your individual selection. You've got all your different modes for color selection. I think I tended to use HSB most often. Felt the most natural to me. And then obviously our layers palette, where you can create a new layer, delete a layer, and set I don't even know if it has layer blending modes. Let me check that. So if we create a new layer, yeah, it does have. So you can do like your multiply, screen, darken, where the upper layer will affect the bottom layer based on that. And then our color channels, any paths for those saved selections or paths that you want to turn into a selection. So I think that's a pretty good, intro overview, again, for what was there in the early days. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up, and we will try to create the thumbnail for this video. So let's get started by creating a new image. And I tend to work at 1920 by 1080 for my YouTube thumbnails. And actually, wait, no, I think what I will do is open my background image, because I think we're going to be fairly limited by our resources on this system. So I've copied over an image that I took on my iPhone and FTP'd over. So you can see even loading a not that high resolution image takes quite a bit. I'll let this load in once, but in editing I'm sure I'm going to be cutting down the wait times quite a bit. But want to give you at least an idea of what this was like. So this image I believe is around 2000 by 1500. So we're going to be cropping out some of it. Let's use our crop tool. And again, our target is going to be that 1920 by 1080. If you set the resolution at the same resolution or any resolution, it will restrict the aspect ratio as you use the crop tool. I think we want, let's maximize actually. All right, I think I want this top of the PC to be right about at the edge. And then that looks pretty good, I think. And then enter to crop. So the image is 9 megs right now. And we'll see how far this takes us down. All right, our crop is done, and we're down to about 6 megs now. So I think the first thing I want to do is put some text across the top. I'm not going to do anything super fancy here because I'm making it on this machine. So I want to keep us fairly simple. To do text, you actually need to create a new layer. And the text is not editable. So first we'll want to create our text. Oh, you know what? I think I probably should have the color picked first. You technically could do it both ways, but I want to get this kind of a little bit more desaturated, kind of orangey color. Now we will do the text. 160. So I'm going to do the top text, this thumbnail created, and then we'll have some more text saying on a 486. So as you can see, performance-wise, this is definitely pushing what you would want to do on a 486, but I definitely remember doing things at this sort of speed and this level of complexity on a machine at the time. Okay, I think that looks good for the placement. I'm going to go ahead and drop the selection. And now that is on this layer. So we can see we have our separate layer. Next up, we will create the text. Let's do this in white. And we'll do, let's try 200. And good old impact. Yeah, almost perfect. I think I'll move it down just a little bit. Let's zoom in just so we can get our position just right. think that's probably pretty good. And then what I want to do is, just to make the text pop a little bit, I'm going to drop a shadow behind these. There is no drop shadow specific ability, so what we're going to have to do is create a new layer. And let's do, so we're going to fill this with black, maybe down to about here. Okay, but I want a nice smooth fade at the bottom. So I'm going to go to select and feather. And let's do like 150. And what that will do is when I fill this black, it will fade at this edge. Because these edges are touching the edges of the image, it won't feather those, only the ones that have image pixels next to them. Okay, I think that should be ready now. So let's fill with a fill tool on that layer that we created. It's probably going to be much darker than we need for now, but we will use the layer opacity to tint it back a bit. Okay, so I think that's a lot better, but let's try bringing it down to quite a bit lighter, like 30%. What I would probably do in a more modern Photoshop is select that gradient and scale it vertically. But there is no layer scaling, at least that I can see. I don't remember if there was a way to do it in this version or not, but I don't think there was. So that was probably a bit too much. We'll go up to like, I don't know, 60 maybe. See how that looks. And then I want to do one more thing, just to kind of show how you would do a drop shadow back in the day. I'm just going to add one on this, on A486 text. If I can remember how to duplicate a layer. There we go, duplicate. Okay, so what we want to do, we'll do preserve transparency. I'm going to basically paint this layer black. I might need to get a larger brush. Actually, let's get a fill. So much easier to do on a modern setup, but it's kind of cool going back and remembering how difficult some of this stuff was. Okay, so we've got our black text. Now we turn off the preserve transparency. Basically what that does is locks, so nothing gets edited that is not a pixel on the layer. But now we want to blur and have this expand. So we will blur. Okay, so we'll give it a 4 or 5 pixel blur. And then we'll turn back on the top layer. I'll probably fade this back with opacity, but let's turn that on first. Yeah, I think we'd probably want even more. We just do another blur. Optimally, you would just do it in one, but we'll go ahead and give it another, just to soften it a bit more. Let's bump it out to like 10 pixels. Okay, I think that is smoother shadow now. And then obviously if you wanted to give it kind of a directionality, you would just move that bottom layer basically. So there we go. I think that is the thumbnail I'll probably go with. I didn't want to go too, far into the weeds with detail work. I might do some minor cleanup stuff here off camera, but that's the gist of creating the thumbnail on the 486 machine. I hope you liked this quick look at Photoshop 3.0 on a vintage 486 machine. I've been using my Wacom tablet here. That's one thing I was actually going to mention. I was hoping to be able to have the pressure stuff working, but I wasn't able to get the right driver or find the right driver that would enable that. I have the Wacom driver installed in Windows 3.1 here, and it's working fine for positioning and all the button clicking and everything, but for whatever reason Photoshop is not picking it up and enabling the pressure options. I used a smaller Wacom tablet back in the day, which was very nice for doing, selections of objects and things like that. It was a lot nicer than using a mouse. So, but in any case, it's been nice to play with this and have some nostalgia of my early days using Photoshop. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.